Satellite signal lost. 04:22 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. United States Space Command registers anomaly. Reconnaissance satellite KH-14 over Eastern Europe stops transmitting. Collision or attack. Natural or hostile. The room demands answers within minutes. Entire battlefield awareness depends on that satellite. Troop movements tracked. Missile launches detected. Communications relayed. Intelligence gathered. Now, darkness. Pentagon relies on commercial space more than ever. Starlink provides frontline connectivity. SpaceX launches military payloads. Private satellites supplement government assets. Planet Labs monitors adversary movements. Maxar provides targeting imagery. The line between commercial and military dissolved years ago. Now crisis exposes the dependency. What happens when corporations control military communications? Who decides in critical moments? Generals or CEOs? Global Conflict Room examines the revolution nobody planned. Space democratized. Access unlimited. Awareness universal. But control fragmented. No single authority. No unified command. 15,000 commercial satellites orbit Earth. 250 military. The ratio tells the story. Commercial space dominates. Military adapts or falls behind. KH-14 satellite. $2 billion asset. 20 years development. Irreplaceable reconnaissance capability. Lost in seconds. Cause unknown. Space Command reviews telemetry. Last data transmission, nominal. Orbital path, stable. Then nothing. 3 possibilities considered. First, collision with space debris. Thousands of fragments orbit dangerously. Tracking imperfect. Impacts inevitable. Second, technical failure. Solar panels, batteries, processors. Complex systems fail. Third, hostile action. Anti-satellite weapon. Kinetic or directed energy. Adversary demonstration. What should command investigate first? A. Debris field analysis. B. Adversary satellite positions. C. Communication system check. Intelligence fusion begins. National Reconnaissance Office analyzes imagery. Space Force tracks orbital mechanics. NSA monitors adversary communications. CIA evaluates geopolitical context. The answer matters enormously. Natural failure. Expensive but contained. Hostile attack. Act of war demanding response. Meanwhile, battlefield commanders lose visibility. Forward operating bases can't communicate. Drones can't transmit targeting data. Artillery can't receive coordinates. The satellite didn't just observe. It enabled. Modern warfare is networked. Break one node. System degrades. Break multiple nodes. System collapses. This is the vulnerability commercial space both solves and creates. Redundancy through numbers. Dependency through integration. SpaceX receives emergency tasking. Launch replacement reconnaissance satellite within 72 hours. Capability exists. Falcon 9 ready. Payload available. But who authorizes? DoD requests. SpaceX decides. Contract terms ambiguous. Corporate policy unclear. CEO approval required. Private company. Public mission. The confusion is doctrine now. Elon Musk weighs military necessity against commercial liability. Launch costs millions. Insurance covers peaceful missions. Combat operations void coverage. Hostile environment changes calculation. Financial risk. Legal exposure. Reputational impact. Yet mission critical. National security depends on answer. The room waits for CEO decision. Not military chain of command. Corporate board approval. This is modern warfare. Necessary evolution or dangerous delegation. Global Conflict Room tracks the transformation. Pentagon signed contracts prioritizing speed. Commercial launch. Commercial satellites. Commercial operations. Efficiency gained. Control lost. Space Force monitors orbital space. Chinese satellite maneuvers close to KH-14 last known position. Coincidence or evidence? Timing suspicious. Capability demonstrated previously. Plausible deniability maintained. Attribution impossible. The ambiguity is strategy. Hostile action without proof. Escalation without fingerprints. How does command respond? Accusation without evidence invites mockery. Action without certainty risks escalation. Inaction signals weakness, encouraging repetition. The dilemma defines modern space conflict. Planet Labs satellite constellation repositions. Commercial assets, now military sensors. Imagery shared with Space Command within minutes. Resolution sufficient for analysis, not replacement for KH-14. But better than blindness, the commercial backup works. This time, dependency grows, vulnerability remains. If you follow space warfare analysis, type GCR. 48 hours post-loss. SpaceX confirms launch capability. Replacement satellite ready. Insurance negotiated. DoD assumes liability. Launch window, 36 hours. Fastest military payload deployment in history. Commercial space enables what government bureaucracy prevents. Speed, flexibility, innovation, but at cost. Strategic decisions made in corporate offices. Military operations dependent on civilian contractors. National security tied to market forces. Which system controls modern space warfare? A. Government satellites. B. Commercial constellations. C. Integrated hybrid networks. International reaction develops. Russia denies involvement. China questions American accusations. European partners express concern. UN calls emergency session. Commercial space complicates diplomacy. Attack on government satellite. Clear aggression. Interference with commercial asset. Regulatory dispute. Legal frameworks inadequate. Treaties outdated. The rules written for different era. Meanwhile, Starlink network experiences anomalies. Satellites in polar orbit report signal degradation. Deliberate jamming or natural interference. Analysis inconclusive, but pattern concerning. Multiple systems affected simultaneously. Coordinated or coincidental. The ambiguity, tactical. If jamming, who responds? Starlink is private company. Pentagon is customer. Does attack on commercial provider constitute attack on United States? Legal scholars debate. Commanders need answers. Lives depend on connectivity. Artillery targeting requires precision. Drone operations need bandwidth. Intelligence fusion demands data flow. Starlink provides all three. One company, thousands of military users, single point of failure distributed across thousands of satellites. The architecture brilliant and terrifying. SpaceX launch proceeds. Falcon 9 lifts from Vandenberg. Payload deploys successfully. Orbital insertion nominal. But satellite needs 3 days to activate fully. Calibration, testing, verification. 3 days without full reconnaissance capability. Adversaries know. Window of opportunity opens. Ground forces adjust operations. Reduced surveillance means increased risk. Patrols minimize exposure. Artillery relies on alternative targeting. Drones operate closer to friendly positions. Tactical adaptation to strategic limitation. This is modern warfare. Capability dependent on orbit. Operations shaped by satellite availability. The vertical dimension dominates. Cyber operations intensify simultaneously. Penetrating adversary space command networks. Identifying anti-satellite capabilities. Mapping communication links. Preparing retaliatory options. If satellites are targets, ground stations become targets. Launch facilities become targets. Command centers become targets. Escalation ladder extends from orbit to Earth. Global Conflict Room analyzes escalation dynamics. Space warfare isn't separate domain. It's integrated theater. Attacks in space enable attacks on ground. Responses on ground affect operations in space. The separation is illusion. Russian anti-satellite system tracked deploying. Noodle system. Proven capability. Direct ascent kinetic kill. Could reach any satellite in low Earth orbit. Deployment, message or preparation. Deterrence or aggression. Command evaluates intent. Planet Labs monitors Russian launch site. Commercial satellite imagery shows increased activity. Vehicles moving. Personnel mobilizing. Could be exercise. Could be real. Attribution improves but remains imperfect. The fog of war extends to space. SpaceX Starship development accelerated. Military variant planned. Rapid deployment platform. 100-ton payload capacity. Revolutionary military space access, but years away. Current crisis requires current solutions. Commercial constellations compensate. Starlink, OneWeb, Kuiper. Thousands of satellites provide resilience. Lose one, thousands remain. Lose 10, thousands remain. The architecture survives attrition, but commands fear systematic attacks, cascading failures, Kessler syndrome. One collision creates debris. Debris causes more collisions. Exponential multiplication. Low Earth orbit becomes unusable. This is existential threat to space operations. Military, commercial, scientific, all endangered. China possesses capability. Russia possesses capability. United States possesses capability. India demonstrated. Japan capable. Mutual vulnerability should ensure restraint. History suggests otherwise. Arms race logic applies. If adversary can attack satellites, must develop counter capability. If adversary develops counter capability, must increase satellite numbers. If adversary increases satellites, must improve attack capabilities. The spiral continues. Space militarization accelerates. What decision would you make in that room? When satellite lost, when replacement takes days, when adversary capabilities uncertain, when commercial providers control access, when attribution impossible, when escalation risks cascade. Command faces these questions now. Not theoretical, operational. KH-14 replacement activates. Full capability restored. Reconnaissance resumes. Targeting improves. Communications stabilize. Crisis contained. But precedent established. Satellites are vulnerable. Commercial space is critical. Corporations hold leverage. Adversaries probe continuously. The new normal emerged. Space warfare isn't future. It's present. Daily. Persistent. Global Conflict Room documents the transformation. From government monopoly to commercial dominance, from clear attribution to permanent ambiguity, from separation to integration, every trend analyzed, every implication examined. Subscribe to Global Conflict Room, inside the room where history changes, where space meets warfare, where commercial becomes military, where corporations command as much as generals. The next satellite crisis already building, the next decision already approaching. Was commercial space strategy brilliant or reckless? Did it provide resilience or create dependency? Does it accelerate innovation or complicate command? The room debates continuously. Doctrine evolves constantly. Space Force establishes Commercial Integration Office, liaison with providers, coordinate operations, manage dependencies, bureaucracy catching up to reality. SpaceX signs expanded contract, guaranteed launch availability, priority tasking, encrypted communications. The partnership formalizes. But questions remain. What happens if CEO refuses mission? What happens if company fails financially? What happens if adversary targets corporate assets? Contingencies planned but untested. Scenarios war-gamed but unproven. The dependency grows faster than mitigation. This is strategic risk accepted for tactical advantage. Meanwhile, orbital space grows crowded. 50,000 satellites planned by 2030. Traffic management nightmare. Collision probability increasing. Military operations complicated. Commercial innovation continues. Government regulation lags. The gap widens. Global Conflict Room tracks the trends. Because understanding modern warfare requires understanding space. not as separate domain, as integrated dimension, where commercial and military blend, where innovation and vulnerability coexist, where control distributes and risk multiplies. The KH-14 incident, warning or preview, single satellite or systemic vulnerability, contained crisis or coming norm, analysis continues, debate persists, but one conclusion clear: space warfare arrived, not dramatically, gradually, through commercial transformation, through technological evolution, through strategic dependency, now irreversible. Inside the room where these decisions made, where generals consult CEOs, where satellites determine battles, where orbit shapes strategy. This is modern conflict. Welcome to the room. The commercialization of space warfare represents most significant shift in military affairs since nuclear weapons, not because of destructive capability, because of access democratization. Previously, only superpowers operated in space, massive budgets, decades-long programs, national prestige projects, launch costs measured in hundreds of millions. Satellite development took years. Constellations were luxury. Now, commercial revolution changed everything. SpaceX reduced launch costs by order of magnitude. Reusable rockets, rapid cadence, standardized payloads. What cost $300 million now costs $60 million. What took 2 years now takes 6 months. Access to space democratized. Capability proliferated. Military operations transformed. This is why KH-14 loss matters beyond single satellite. It demonstrates dependency on architecture nobody planned. Pentagon didn't choose commercial space revolution. Market-forced adaptation. SpaceX launched faster than government. Starlink deployed before military alternatives. Planet Labs provided imagery government couldn't match. Private sector innovated. Public sector incorporated. Now, military operations depend on commercial infrastructure. Frontline troops use Starlink terminals. Artillery targeting uses Planet Labs imagery. Intelligence fusion uses Maxar analysis. Logistics tracking uses commercial GPS augmentation. The integration is complete. The dependency is total, which creates strategic vulnerabilities adversaries exploit. Jamming commercial signals is cheaper than destroying military satellites. Cyber-attacking corporate networks is easier than penetrating classified systems. Threatening private companies is more effective than confronting governments. The asymmetry favors attackers. China understands this. Anti-satellite weapons development continues. But also, commercial space companies face regulatory pressure. Market access threatened. Partnership opportunities dangled. The economic leverage complements military capability. Russia understands this. Demonstrations of anti-satellite capability intimidate. But also, energy exports to European SpaceX contractors create dependencies. Political pressure on corporate boards multiplies. The influence operations run parallel to military operations. United States faces dilemma. Commercial space provides advantages, but creates risks. Innovation exceeds government capability. Speed surpasses bureaucracy. Cost undercuts alternatives. But control is diluted. Security is complicated. Reliability is questioned. The trade-off is unavoidable in current architecture, which is why Space Force established Commercial Integration Office, not to command companies, to coordinate operations, not to direct launches, to request priorities, not to own satellites, to rent capability. The relationship is partnership, which means neither side fully controls. Government needs commercial access. Companies need government contracts. Mutual dependency creates stability, usually. But during crisis, interests may diverge. Company prioritizes survival. Government prioritizes mission. Shareholders versus citizens. Profit versus security. The tensions are inherent. KH-14 replacement launch demonstrated this. SpaceX could refuse. Pentagon would scramble. Alternative providers exist, but inferior capability. United Launch Alliance launches slower. Arianespace charges more. Chinese and Russian options obviously unavailable. The market concentration creates leverage, which Elon Musk understands perfectly. Not that he refuses missions, but he negotiates terms, insurance coverage, liability limits, operational control. Each launch requires contract discussion. Each crisis requires corporate decision. The military chain of command now includes corporate offices. Generals consult with CEOs. Admirals negotiate with boards. Colonels coordinate with managers. This is modern warfare's weird architecture, and it's accelerating. Starship development promises 100-ton payloads. Entire space stations launched at once. Military bases in orbit become feasible. Cislunar operations become possible. The strategic implications are enormous, but private company controls access. SpaceX owns Starship. Government rents capacity. What happens if relationship sours? What happens if Musk disagrees with policy? What happens if company faces financial crisis? Contingencies exist, but are inadequate. Government could nationalize in emergency, but destroys innovation incentive. Damages commercial sector. Creates international incident. The option is last resort, preferably never used, which means dependency on commercial space is permanent condition, not temporary arrangement. Strategic vulnerability accepted for operational advantage. This is the calculation Global Conflict Room examines, because understanding modern warfare requires understanding this architecture. Space operations are military critical. Commercial companies provide space access. Therefore, commercial companies are military critical. The logic is simple. The implications are profound. Every conflict now has commercial space dimension. Ukraine war, Starlink provided communications. Russian jamming attempted disruption. Cyber attacks targeted networks. The battle extended to corporate infrastructure. Taiwan scenario, commercial satellites would track Chinese movements. Commercial launches would replace destroyed assets. Commercial networks would maintain connectivity. The dependency is universal. Gaza operations. Commercial imagery showed battlefield damage. Commercial satellites detected rocket launches. Commercial analytics supported targeting. The integration is complete. This is why satellite warfare matters more than most realize, not science fiction future. Operational present. KH-14 loss was warning. Next incident might be worse. Kessler syndrome is real possibility. One major collision creates debris field. Debris field causes more collisions. Exponential cascade. Low Earth orbit becomes unusable. Satellites deorbit or destroy. Communications collapse. GPS fails. Weather monitoring stops. Climate research ends. The catastrophe is civilization level, not just military problem. Everyone loses. Which is why space warfare requires restraint. Mutual vulnerability should ensure caution. Adversaries possess anti-satellite weapons. United States possesses anti-satellite weapons. China possesses anti-satellite weapons. Russia possesses anti-satellite weapons. India demonstrated capability. Japan capable of development. The proliferation is complete. Use invites retaliation. Retaliation invites escalation. Escalation invites catastrophe. Catastrophe is mutual. This is space age, mutually assured destruction. Different domain. Same logic. Yet tests continue. Demonstrations persist. Capabilities improve. The restraint is assumed, not guaranteed, which is what keeps Global Conflict Room focused on space warfare. The next crisis is inevitable. Only timing uncertain. Could be debris collision shutting down constellation. Could be cyber attack disabling ground stations. Could be direct attack destroying critical satellite. Could be jamming degrading entire network. Any scenario triggers crisis. Crisis demands response. Response risks escalation. This is modern space warfare. Constant, persistent, dangerous. Subscribe to Global Conflict Room. Inside the room where space meets strategy, where orbit determines outcomes, where commercial becomes critical, where corporations command capability. The next satellite crisis approaches. The next decision awaits. Understanding requires analysis. Analysis requires information. Information requires perspective. That's what this room provides. Every crisis, every decision, every consequence, examined, explained, evaluated. Because modern warfare happens in space, and space warfare happens now.